And there is something like peak oil that is occurring, and add to that the very real problem of global warming, which really is a kind of could be fatal to our civilization. We must develop alternate supplies of energy other than oil, and there is no escape from that. And probably the most cheapest and most abundant source of energy, alternative energy, is coal. But coal is extremely polluting, and therefore but there are ways of taking carbon out of coal. However, that costs money, and you don't at the present time have a price on carbon that would justify taking carbon out of coal. That is a problem that is confronting us, and we have not dealt with it, and that, I think, in my mind, overshadows everything else.
Right, and I think one of the things we're trying to get at here is, the people I talk about in Minnesota, but also that there's money that's going to places that it probably shouldn't, that maybe we can fuel it into what you're talking about, this development of new technology and coal and solar, wind, and that's what we're trying to get at. And we've been, as you know, blocked time and time again in Congress right now from doing that. And I just wondered... go ahead.
It does mean that the cost of energy is going to be higher. We have to bite the bullet as far as that is concerned, and we have to adjust our way of life.
Could you, and I think that people have gone beyond Jimmy Carter with the sweater, gloomy, saying that conservation is going to be hard. I think that they see this as a huge economic burden to them right now, and they are more interested in looking at whatever it is, mass transit or different things. The report came out today, 10% increase in mass transit as ways of dealing with this. But I just wanted to get quickly your response to what Mr. Greenberger says as we get pushback on the margin, the idea of increasing the margin, or also on further closing the Enron loophole for crude oil. And the pushback that Mr. Greenberger has mentioned is companies saying, we're going to take our business elsewhere and it'll hurt your economy even more. And I just wondered how you would respond to that.
Yeah. I think that it won't be quite as easy as Mr. Greenberg said to regulate the unregulated oil market, because the oil market is an international market, and trades take place all over the world. So while it may be possible to, and I think the American institutions that are, let's say, now accumulating oil as an asset class could be regulated, and they could be brought under regulation, and that would make a very big difference. I think bringing hedge funds, many of them not domiciled in the United States, many of them not run by people in the United States, under the same kind of controls would be much more difficult.
Thank you.
Senator, one observation.
Dr.
It would be infinitely easier to convince the American people to spend $40 a barrel to address the environmental and social costs of energy consumption if we weren't spending $80 a barrel on speculation and the abuse of market power. So we really do have to keep these two things separate.
Right.
I agree entirely that energy is, we really do have to recognize the social cost. But that doesn't mean we should pay the ransom that's being extracted from us now.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Nelson, last question.
I agree about the ransom that we're paying, and you all have been wonderful in your presentation here to make it very clear about this speculation. But at the end of the day, what we have to have is the political will to start weaning ourselves from dependence on oil and go to the alternatives. We had a wake-up call in the early 70s. We went back to sleep. We had a wake-up call in the late 70s. We went back to sleep. We had another wake-up call in the late 80s, early 90s, and we went back to sleep. And now, early in this decade, we had another wake-up call that's still continuing. And the question is, are we going to go back to sleep? And bottom line, and this is my question, isn't it going to take the new president to say that we're going to have the equivalent of an Apollo program and that we are going to break this dependence on especially foreign oil?
I think yes.
If you look at the cost of the climate change legislation before being considered by the Senate as we speak, I added up the numbers. It's almost $5 trillion over about 40 years. So the Senate is now contemplating programs of an immense order of magnitude. We're going to wrangle about how the consumer is going to bear that cost. But the Congress has finally begun to have this debate. All of the presidential candidates have said they understand that there's a problem here. So, in fact, we may have wasted a long time, but, you know, all the evidence suggests that we're getting ready to grapple with this really difficult issue.
I'll end on a good note, Madam Chair. You know, for each of the 8 years that you and I have been in the Senate, we have tried to increase miles per gallon, and we have always been defeated in the fleet average. And we were operating on a standard that didn't mean anything because it was 25 miles per gallon from the 1980s, but trucks and SUVs were exempt, so it didn't mean anything. And every year we offered it and we were beat. But we finally won. A modest increase of only 35 miles per gallon phased in over the next 12 years to 2020, but at least we succeeded with a modest increase. And I hope that's a foretelling of things to come. Thank you.
Well, I thank Senator Nelson and all the members for attending this hearing. I certainly want to thank the panel and for their testimony, Mr. Soros, Mr. Greenberger, Mr. Ram, Ms. Watson, Dr. Cooper. Thank you very much for being here. We will continue this discussion. I plan to continue to push the CFTC on their no action letter and certainly on the FTC and getting an interim rule in place. But we thank you for illuminating this issue for so many of us in the United States Senate and certainly for our constituents. This hearing is adjourned.